Hey there everybody, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to keep pushing forward with some Team Yankee content, and we're going to unbox and review the T-72 Tank Battalion starter force for the Warsaw Pact. So I'm going to be using these models in my Soviet force, but you can use this box set as a starter force for any of the Warsaw Pact armies. So over on the back of the box, we'll take a look at the contents. So you're going to get 7 of the T-72 tank sprues. You can build the base T-72 or the B or the M variants. You're going to get 5 T-55 sprues, 2 of the Hind helicopters, the iconic Hind. You're also going to get 2 Su either 17 or 22. You can build both off of the same sprue. You're going to get your flight stands, some magnets, and your rulebook, your starter here booklet, and all of your unit cards. So these boxes are massive and filled to the brim. So I'm going to let you guys take a peek in there. And then I'm going to jump cut because I've only got one hand while I'm filming, and I'll get everything out of here and we'll take a look at the contents. All right, so starting us off, we have our T-72 Tank Battalion Start Here booklet. We will take a look at that down at the table here in a minute. We've also got our rulebook as well as our cards and decals. Now, here is all of the plastic that was crammed into that box. It was actually kind of difficult to get everything out, and even to cram everything in here. So these 3 piles of plastic right here are the T-72 sprues. They actually had to cut them into parts just to get everything to fit in there. So let's quickly go through these. So over here in this pile, these are going to be our T-55 sprues. You know them, you love them. Then we've got our Hind sprues. So these come in 2 sprues to make 1 helicopter, and then you get 2 of those. So the main fuselage, and then your rotors and some accessories on that second sprue. Then you get 2 of your gaskin / spandrel sprues. And then we've got some resin missiles for our planes. Wait, speaking of the planes, we've got our 2 baggies of Su-17, Su-22 fighter bombers. Then we've got our packs of flight stands, which I can find them without opening. There are some rare earth magnets in here. So the flight stands are magnetizable, which will make storing those easier. And then we've got our tank commander sprue. All right, so let's take a quick look at the T-72 Start Here booklet. So I thought this was going to be like a book, sort of like the one that comes in the main 2-player starter set, but it's actually a trifold, and it's massive. So we kind of needed the giant table. I wouldn't be able to do this down at my desk. So in the booklet, you get some quick instructions for how to build the T-72, the T-55, your gaskins, the Hind helicopters, and then they tell you to find the Su-17 separately. I'm assuming that might be tucked into the rulebook. However, they have detailed build guides for all of their vehicles on their website. I highly suggest that you use those instead of this. The ones on their website go step by step with pictures of the assembly. But they give you a quick look at the unit cards and so forth. Okay, so on the back we have all of our point values if you actually use these models as a T-72 Tank Battalion for each of the Warsaw Pact forces. So for me, as a Soviet, I'm going to be able to get 51 points out of this box. For the Czechoslovakian players, you're going to get 43. East Germans, you're going to get 47. And Polish, you're going to be able to get 50. But yeah, so in the middle of the spread on the back, they kind of have this what's next section that kind of tells you how you can expand your forces and so forth. But yeah, no, this is a really handy inclusion, considering that you may not have access to the official army builder just yet. Which, if you don't, and you're considering getting into the game for whichever force, as long as you know what faction you want to play, I highly suggest going ahead and paying and getting access to the army builder. It'll really help you plan out your purchases. Okay, but with this out of the way, let's go ahead, head down to the hobby desk, and we'll take a look at those sprues up close. Right, so next up, we have the BRDM2 sprue. Now, this sprue is actually really, really cool. I was mistaken before. It actually builds 3 different vehicles. So you get the BRDM2, the Gaskin anti-air vehicle, and then the Spandrel anti-tank vehicle. And so now with 2 of these, they will have a magnetizable turret. So here's the turret housing for the BRDM2, and then your anti-air vehicle has this quad launcher system, and then your anti-tank uses this mounting plate that actually sits on top of the magnet hole in the hull. So as long as you don't glue that plate down to the top of the vehicle, you can magnetize your 2 turret options and then just leave this to where it will sit on top of the hull, and it's actually kind of keyed to just slot right over that magnet hole. So you can actually build all 3 vehicles and swap between them with whatever your list happens to need whenever you get ready for a game. Alright, so here we are with the Hind sprues. So these are freaking massive. It's interesting when you're looking at pictures on the website, and even on the box, you don't necessarily really get a sense of the scale until you actually get it in your hands. So like, just to put this down on the mat so that you guys can see with the ruler down here on the mat. So this thing is almost 7 inches long on the fuselage, and then each one of these rotors is a good 3 inches in length. So yeah, this thing is massive. I don't know how I'm gonna transport this to and from the game store. So if anyone has any suggestions down in the comment box below, go ahead and pop those in there and let me know how you guys actually getting your helicopters to the game store. I will say, let's get a close-up. So one of my biggest criticisms with the Battlefront aircraft has been shallow details on the plastic, but this Hind actually looks like it's got really nice deep detail on the fuselage, so that's not a problem here. I think this will take washes and pin washing very, very well. The other thing I wanted to mention, so, is with the Battlefront flight stand system. You know, the planes that I had reviewed, they didn't really work with the flight stand system, which, you know, for a stock flight stand, this is one of the better flight stands that I've seen. The Hind doesn't seem to have that problem. So it's a little hard to see because, you know, it's in half. But right here is actually a magnet recess, very similar to the magnet recesses that we have on the turrets of our tanks. So the magnet cap for the flight stand will actually come up into the body and be able to attach to a magnet very, very easily, which is very nice to see. I wish the planes had that same design, but we'll be able to drill into those and make it work. But that's the Hind. I'm really excited for this kit, and I'll be definitely painting this most likely first once I actually get started to paint these Russians. Right, so here are the Su-22 sprues. So you have your main fuselage over here on my left, and then your wings and your weapons over here on my right. So similar to some of the other aircraft models from Battlefront that I have reviewed, these details are really, really shallow. Unlike the tanks have had superbly crisp detail, but the aircraft so far have been very, very shallow. So if you have access to an airbrush, that is definitely how I would recommend painting this. You know, if you don't have access to an airbrush, you're going to want to use very, very thin layers of paint so that you don't clog up that detail before you can panel line it. I'm not entirely sure, you know, as to, you know, why that is, because all of the tanks have been really, really good. I'm curious if it has something to do with the rounded surfaces, but yeah, those details are really, really shallow. Here go the cockpit options. And then this sprue, I'm not entirely sure of the difference, but on the box it does say that you can build the Su-17 as well, so I'm assuming that the main difference is just in the weapon options. Alright, so here is the T-55 sprue. This will build the T-55AM as well as the T-55AM2. The big difference between the two kits is going to be which turret you use and then the side skirts. Everything else is largely similar between them. They do have slightly different barrels as well, and it looks like different machine guns. And looks like your front hatches might be a little bit different as well. But again, really, really great sharp detail on these kits. Will really handle pin washing very, very well. Alright, and here we are with the T-72 sprues. So it looks like, you know, size-wise, it's roughly the same size as the T-80 sprue, just with how jam-packed that box was. They had to go ahead and separate it out into the three component parts just to make it a little bit smaller. But we've got our tank treads, the undercarriage, some accessories, looks like the barrel. Over here, we've got our hull. We've got one turret, which I'm not sure which variant of the T-72 that turret's for. But I am definitely using this one with the ERA armor. It just looks way cooler. And then because of how nice and sharp that detail is, this is going to take dry brushing and washing very, very well. I will also mention that the side skirts here do appear to be keyed, so they should be nice and easy to actually get on the tank. Alright, so next we've got the decals that they give you. So these are the aircraft decals for the SU-22/SU-17. They do give you decals for all of the Warsaw Pact nations, which is pretty cool. So you've got East Germany, the Soviets, Poland, and Czechoslovakia, and then some unit markings. And then we've got the ever classic, there we go, Russian numbers of various sizes, and you get 2 sheets of those. And then what we're going to do, so you get cards for each of the Warsaw Pact countries for the units that come in the box. I'm partial to the Soviets because that's what I'm building, so we'll take a look at the Soviet cards. But just so that you know, you do get your cards if you wanted to play one of the other Warsaw Pact nations here in the box. We're just not going to go through them to save time. So you do get this bifold force card that shows you all of the primary formations available to you at the time of printing. I do believe that since more books have come out since this was made, this card is technically a little bit out of date. There's going to be some other options available to you. To know exactly what you have available to you in your army, I highly recommend looking at the official Forces Army Builder on the Battlefront website. But it gives you the support options on the back as well. And again, all of the 4 Warsaw Pact countries will have one of these. But then the Soviet unit cards. So we've got the T-72B with our point cost and special rules on the back. We've got our Battalion HQ card with our points and formation building on the back. We've got the SU-17 fitter, which I'm kind of disappointed they did not include the SU-25 card. Once we're done, I'll take a look and see if maybe that's a country-specific sort of thing. But points cost and special rules. And we've got the T-55AM. The Gaskin, which, you know, same complaint here. This kit builds 3 different vehicles. They only included the card for 1. The other Warsaw Pact starter, the BMP company, does have 1 of the other cards. So, you know, if you're collecting both boxes, you'll end up getting the cards anyway, but a little disappointing that they didn't include all of the options for the kit. And then, oh, actually, I'm sorry, I don't think I showed off the back of that one. And then our hide. Alright, and again, I'm just curious if any of these have a so maybe the Su-22 is country locked, because the Czechs have a 22 card, but not a 17. So maybe it's country locked, and if that's the case, I rescind my previous comment. But for the East Germans get the 22. No 17, and the Poles get the 22 and no 17. Huh. So maybe it is just locked by what country you're playing. But yeah, the Gaskill sprue, or I'm sorry, the Gaskin sprue, having those other two vehicles would have been a nice inclusion. But that is it for all of the cards. Alright, so let's go ahead and break down the value of the T-72 Tank Battalion starter force. So the box, the MSRP is $110 USD. Now the table below, the two important columns, so there's the actual retail cost. So that's what you would need to spend at retail if you were going to buy that line item individually. And then there's the actual retail value of what you're getting in the box. So for the first row, for the 7 T-72s that you get in the box, they're only sold in boxes of 5. So you would need to buy 2 boxes, which is where you get the $100 actual retail cost, but they're worth $10 per tank. So you get 7 in the box, the retail value is $70. So as you can see down in the totals, this bundle is saving you 50% of the retail value. It's actually a little bit greater of a discount if you consider what you would actually have to spend at retail in order to acquire all of the items that come in the box. So as you can see, it's a really, really great deal if you love these units, and for the Warsaw Pact nations, specifically the Soviets, the Hind helicopters are iconic multi-purpose units for you. The T-72s are a nice sort of all-rounder tank, really good to have a unit of these in your collection. You also get some other really useful things. The VRDM kit can be used for anti-air, anti-tank, as well as scouting, so you really get a lot of flexibility in this box at a really great discount. Alright, so here we are with the assembled contents of the box down here on the table. So over here on the left up first, we've got our 5 T-55 tanks. These look really, really awesome. Great sculpted detail. Then we've got our T-72s, which again, awesome sculpted details. Love that ERA armor. Then we've got our 2 Gaskin air support, or anti-air vehicles rather. And then I have the magnetized turret options over in the back. It's super simple to magnetize those turrets, so I highly recommend doing so. The only thing that looks a little awkward are these anti-tank racks. when you put the magnet on, there's not a recess deep enough on the part, so they sit a little raised up from the hull. But again, from tabletop distances, you're not really going to notice it. And then up next, we've got the Hind helicopters, which I think I mentioned it previously in the video. If anyone has any tips on how to store those outside of the obvious foam, definitely leave a comment down below. Those propeller blades are like super thin and super flimsy, and I'm afraid that they will break. And then lastly, we've got the Su-17/22 fighter bombers. Now again, similar to the Su-25s, these are Academy kits. The details are a little bit softer than everything else in the box. Again, I highly recommend probably painting these with an airbrush so that you end up not obscuring your panel lines. But overall thoughts, I think it's a great value box. We broke down how much of a savings that you will get. And then in my last video, if you haven't watched it, we reviewed the BMP Motor Rifle Battalion. These two sets combine very, very easily, and you can get really, really close to that 100-point line by combining the two box sets and save yourself a whole lot of money. So that'll be the next video. We'll go over how that all works. But until next time, keep slaying that gray, Hobby Warriors, and we'll catch you in the next video.